In today's video, I'm going to be continuing my journey through the Fighters Guild questline featured in the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. Last time, I finished up my remaining contracts with Lorbumel Groaglak and Adis Fireeye. Their quests were most certainly odd, as they heavily involved aiding the Kimona Tong and targeted other factions like the Thieves Guild and even the Empire. Afterwards, I visited Perseus Mercius at the Aldrune Guildhall, and his contracts leaned more heavily into helping out the citizens of the province. This is where the story continues. Speaking with Mercius again, he asked if I was looking for more orders, or perhaps even an advancement. Inquiring about the former, he told me to come back when I achieved the rank of Guardian. For now though, he thinks it's best that I get sent over to Hrundi in Sadrith Mora for some work that's more appropriate for me. Perseus calls him a good man and says that I can trust him, which, by today's standards within the guild, certainly means a lot. Curiously, I tried to ask for a promotion, but Mercius told me that I needed to double my training, as more than likely my minor favorite skills weren't up to snuff. Leaving the hall, I took the Mages Guild teleportation services from Aldrune to the Wolverine Hall. From there, I descended a bit down the staircase before I landed outside the doors to the faction. Entering inside, I got a quick survey of the NPCs before I went ahead and spoke with Hrundi. The Nord wondered if I was here for orders or an advancement. Choosing the former, he informed me that someone by the name of Lariana Macrina needs the guild to provide her with some assistance. She's going to be making an expedition inside of the Dwemer ruins of Kurdoms. Asking about the ruins, Hrundi tells me that it's far to the south of Sadrith Mora. Apparently, Lariana will be waiting outside for me, and he tells me that together we're to clear out some necromancers who have set up camp inside. Before leaving, he marks it on my map, and I notice that it's rather close to Halamayan. Fortunately, due to my progress for the main questline, I have a pretty quick way to travel over to that region. Making the necessary arrangements for traveling to Ebonheart, I spoke with Blata Haturia, who offered me passage over to the Dissident Priest hideout. From there, I leapt and levitated over to the marked section and arrived outside of Kurdoms. Standing by a campfire was Lariana Macrina. Speaking with her, she asked if I was here on behalf of the Fighters Guild, saying that my movements were pretty obvious. She was hoping that there would be more of us, but I'll have to do for now. She tells me that she's seeking out a great beast within the ruins, and that her and I will explore together. Getting a little more into the story, Macrina says that this specific Daedroth is one in which she's been tracking and hunting for quite some time. They've had squabbles in the past, and the last time she's battled the beast, named Harelvesu, she landed a critical strike on it. The beast is weak and is still healing from their last encounter. She calls out the ruins as being heavily guarded and that there's some fighting to be done before we reach the Daedroth. Telling her I'm ready, the two of us begin our assault inside. So, as the quest was explained to me through Hrundi, he mentioned that we'd be dealing with necromancers. As it turns out, there are no necromancers in here whatsoever. The two of us mostly dealt with dwarven centurions, so spiders, spheres, steams, etc. They were powerful foes in their own right, but certainly not necromancers. The ruins of Kurdoms was actually a relatively small space. There were a mix of a few hallways and smaller sized rooms, but there was nothing more beyond the one and only zone. Macrina does talk to the player at certain points, as when you get to a specific section, she'll warn you that the beast is near and that the two of you should be on your guard. Within one of the rooms, I managed to find an enchanted spear called Ilkarok. It was a dwarven construct and had the enchantments of Fortify Spear for 10 points and Night Eye for 15 points. Definitely an interesting weapon, but I'm not so into using spears anymore. Heading further into the ruins, it was finally time to face Harelvesu. I got to a steel and iron door that was secured by a level 60 lock and opened it using a key I had found previously. Charging in, we began our attack on the Daedroth. During it, Macrina cries out that she has come for the beast and that it should ready itself. It had the standard stats of most Daedroth, including its attacks, health, and abilities. Once it was defeated, Lariana tells me that even though the beast has been slain, she still feels uneasy about the rest of the ruins, as after all, this was apparently its lair. She decides to stay and look around further, but thanks me for my help and bids me farewell. It is interesting as there are no more areas to explore or wander around in, but perhaps she could be curious about that giant crystal within the room. Regardless, I returned back to Hrundi in Sadrith Mora and told him of our accomplishments. Lariana had a glowing report for me, so the Nord gives me 500 septums for my work on the contract. Asking for more work, Hrundi says that someone by the name of Novor Drethin has hired the guild to take care of a problem over at Depla Mine. Inquiring about the mines, he tells me that the client is actually its owner. The job has something to do with Nyx hounds getting loose and attacking some of the miners. As for its location, he says the mines are northeast of the Dunmer stronghold of Fallen Serrano, west of Talaran. He marks the stronghold on my map, and it's time to set off. Exiting the Wolverine Hall through these southern doors, I lined up Fallen Serrano on my map and began to leap there. Arriving at the structure, I turned to the northeast and located a small cave door. Entering inside, I had my weapon ready, but let my guard down as soon as I laid eyes on a couple of miners, along with some Imperial Legionnaires. Locating Novor, I spoke with him and he greeted me, asking if I was here to help out with some problems in the mine. He tells me that a pack of Nyx hounds has been attacking the miners. At first, the crew was thought to be dead. However, they recently returned safely. This wasn't before the healer, Taras Arathen, went looking for them, and now the crew is worried that Taras has been killed. Novor asks me to go looking for him, as he must stay here and protect the workers. Agreeing to do so, I was confused as to why the able-bodied, battle-hardened Imperial Legionnaires couldn't do it, but I guess it's more money in the guild's pockets. Looking around the mines for a bit, I came across some unexplored territory that contained Nyx hounds. No matter what level you are, Nyx hounds really aren't that big of a threat. In total, there are around 4 or so of the beasts, and Taras himself could be found up on a ledge on the left-hand side of the mines. Speaking with him, he asks if Drethin sent me. If so, he'd like for the two of us to travel back to Novor together. I tell him to follow me, and the rest is relatively straightforward and easy. As soon as Taras was within close proximity to Novor, I got a journal update. All Taras could say to me afterwards was thank you, but Novor offered me a little bit more. He asked if the healer was back yet, and telling him yes, he thanked me for my efforts and offered me 4 pieces of raw glass as a reward. If not used for alchemy, these can be sold for around 200 septims apiece. Returning back to Hrundi, he asked me what my progress was with Depla Mine. I filled him in on the details, and as my official compensation, he paid me out 250 gold. Asking for more work, Hrundi actually offers me 2 contracts at the same time. The first deals with taking care of a corpus stalker that found its way into Berwyn's trade shop up over in Telmora. The second one deals with bringing the outlaw, Rels Tenem, to justice. For the former, Hrundi doesn't offer much more information, other than I should get the rest of the scoop from Berwyn herself. As for the latter, he tells me that Rels is a wanted murderer. He was last seen near Voss, which is why Hrundi thinks it's best to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, as both contracts are in and around the same area. Starting off with the corpus stalker, I made my way into the town of Sadrath Mora and took a boat ride over to Telmora. Locating the trade shop on my map, I entered inside and spoke with the proprietor, Berwyn. She started off by asking if I was here to take care of the stalker. Telling her yes, she said that they managed to trap it in the upstairs section. However, no one has dared to get near it, for fear of contracting the disease, which completely makes sense. Usually, Master Arian of Tel Voss should be the one to take care of such matters, but as of late, he's been held up with his duties. She tells me to please hurry as it's wrecking her shop. Going on my way, I ascended to the upper level and spotted the diseased being trapped beyond some crates. Stalkers aren't too tricky as enemies to begin with, and if you have some sort of ranged attack or long weapon, killing it should be a cakewalk, as the journal puts it. I helped myself to some of the smaller treasures found within the area and then descended back down to Berwyn. Speaking with her, I told her that the corpus stalker was taken care of, and she thanked me for my efforts. No extra reward though. Next, it was time to go to Voss in order to deal with the outlaw, Rels Tenem. Leaping over to the area, I entered inside of Varro's trade house and spoke with Heron Mananalit. She told me that Rels was a thief and that he had recently stolen from some of the farmers in the area. She thinks it's best to speak with them to get a better scoop on where he could be. Heading more towards the Voss outpost, I located a Dunmer man named Drainos Elvel and asked him about the outlaw. Elvel tells me that Rels stole some guar and some of the crops. He isn't sure where he is now, but there's a very good chance that the Ahomusa Ashlander camp would. Wandering north to the Free People's area, I chatted with Camu and asked her about Rels. She tells me that a man went to the cavern of Shallot. Shallot is on a small island southwest of Alt Daedroth. This man apparently fled on a night when neither of the moons were shining, and she speculates that this could be Rel's. She gives me some pretty solid instructions on how to get to the island that Shallot is on. I'm to cross the water to the north, and from the island I'll land on, I travel northwest. From there, I'll happen to cross 2 more islands. The second island's north side contains the entrance to Shallot. It admittedly did take me a while to find it, as it was pretty well hidden in the coves of the sea. I kept running around Drethin Ancestral Tomb, but eventually landed on the cave. Entering inside, I wandered through the caverns for a bit before coming across a note. It reads, "Gaiden, here's a blade for the new man. Send him ahead and we'll set up his arrangements. Dinner is waiting, but not for you. Morrowind is sick again, so you've drawn sentry duty. Don't worry, you'll be getting a portion of his share. Stay alert, bounty hunters are seeking us. But I feel fairly secure up here. Signed, Rels." Located throughout the long corridors and passageways of the caverns are various trinkets, weapons, riches, and loot. At the end of it, there's a doorway leading into the Drethin Ancestral Tomb. As pointed out by the UESP, if you didn't read that note by the entrance, you likely would have wandered into it and would have had to face a whole plethora of other problems. However, the giveaway from the note was Rels telling Gaiden that he feels safe up here. Around the center point of Shallot, I looked up and noticed a small carved out area up in the rocks. Levitating over, I followed the passageways, which shortly thereafter led me over to the real enemies. In total, there were 5 bandits, including Rel's Tenem. They ranged in levels from 12 to 18, and their classes varied from warrior to witch hunter, barbarian, knight, crusader, etc. Some of them had some pretty decent loot too, including enchanted weapons and armor. There were 3 separate sections which contained 3 groups of bandits. The final one was where Tenem resided. Killing him, he too had some decent loot, and his hideout held some interesting treasures. Among the most interesting to me was a page ripped out of Rel's Tenem's journal. It reads, "We've struck a bargain with evil. While I am uncomfortable and feel some unease with our current arrangement, I believe these warrens will serve us well for some time. Those who hope to destroy me must be of stout spirit and cunning mind, for if they simply forge ahead in these caves, they may meet a fate far worse than death. When we first discovered these caves and began our explorations, we were sure we found refuge from our enemies. Little did we know, as we pushed into the interior galleries, what we would find. In the final chamber, we came upon the ruined portal to a vast tomb. At first, we were eager to chance upon some riches to fill our coffers, but instead, we found ourselves within the nest of deadly creatures. By our wits and skill of arms, we were able to retreat from the dark lair. For a time, we sealed the entry, but the threat continued to gnaw at us. It was Gaiden who conceived the plan with which we presented to those beings of darkness. In return for our right to dwell within these caves, we provide sustenance for these creatures. To assist us in this venture, we've created a lure, a path for the bounty hunters and meddlesome folk to follow. The unwary will find themselves in the clutches of a black fate. Morrowind is very unhappy with the current conditions, and I'm finding myself concurring. This cannot come to a good end, but we must stay the course until a new safehold can be found. If you were just as curious as I was as to what was on the other side of that door, I went on through to the tomb and encountered someone dead. There weren't anything too tricky, however, it was a little further into the tomb that the real evil resided. Cracking open a door, I was lunged at by the vampire, Marara. Marara can most certainly prove to be a difficult fight for mid to lower level players, and that's not including her undead backup that she has with her. Interestingly, Marara actually has her own quest that's a part of the vampire questline, so it probably would be best to wait to kill her. However, in my case, I'm going to be doing the questline with a whole other character, so I slew her and took her enchanted ring, which has the effects of Reflect for 20 points on self, Fortify Acrobatics for 10 points, and Resist Normal Weapons for 40 points. The Drethin Tomb is rather small and doesn't offer much more in terms of exploration. But regardless, I recalled back to Hrundi and turned in both of the contracts. He rewarded me 500 septims for killing the corporate stalker, and he rewarded me 250 for defeating Rel's Tenem. Getting right into the next contract, I asked the Nord for more orders, and he gave me a job that was all too familiar. He said that he needed someone to bring a shipment of Suama to the Dunarai Caverns. Asking about the cave, he said that the workers in the mine had been complaining about the lack of provisions, mainly Suama. He echoes Perseus's words and tells me that the Fighters Guild is responsible for supplying the Imperial mines here on Vardenfell. I'm to hand the Suama over to someone named Nelacar. Apparently, the Dunerai Caverns are southeast of the Ghost Gate, and in between the Foyadas of Asanadan and Ashradan. Before, when Perseus had me doing a mission similar to this one, I had mixed feelings about it, calling it rather easy compared to the work I had already done, but also appreciating the break from all the action and the suspense that it made me feel, not knowing if there was going to be a twist or not. As pointed out by a commenter, higher level characters wouldn't really think twice about this one. It's as simple as carrying 20 bottles of alcohol to a mine and handing it to a contact in there. However, looking at things from the perspective of a new, lower level player completely changes everything. You're given 20 bottles that weigh 3 pounds each, so that's 60 pounds of inventory space taken up right there. Then, you're sent off to a pretty far area that has no real way of connecting to any of the fast travel points. Plus, all you're given is rough directions and landmarks. Without leap, levitate, and powerful gear, I can certainly see how this quest would prove to be challenging, even for a higher level character like mine. What's more, I actually got myself lost in and around this area. It isn't really a region that I've had the pleasure of exploring much of. The rocky terrain and high ridges make it difficult to spot entrances to caves and tombs, and the dust storms certainly didn't do much to help with my vision either. Eventually though, I did find the Dunerai Caverns and entered inside. These mines were meant for the harvesting and procurement of glass, as opposed to the Eleth Pals, which were meant for ebony. Again, there were legionnaires posted all around, and workers mining away. Towards the end of the passage, I came across the High Elf, Nelacar. Speaking with him, I told him that I had his shipment of Suama. Handing it over, he was content that the miners would be happy again, and shared that he personally isn't able to stomach the stuff. He apparently prefers Valenwood wine, which is such an Altmer thing to say. Similar to the Flynn quest, there isn't much more to do around here unless you want to take your chances with stealing from the glass veins. Something I did find to be really interesting though, is that there was a High Elf Nightblade within the caverns named Volinaro. In Oblivion, there's a High Elf Nightblade also named Volinaro, who's a part of the Mages Guild. Morrowind's High Elf doesn't really look like the one from Oblivion, although I don't know that should be taken too highly into account. But other than a dialogue prompt pertaining to the Mages Guild, it doesn't necessarily classify if he's a part of the faction or not. But I definitely do wonder if this could be the very same troublemaker found in Bruma. Recalling back to Hrundi, he asked for my progress, and I told him that the shipment had been delivered. He called it good work and paid me out 500 septums, which is funny because that's double what I earned for killing a group of bandits. I guess though, the government pays pretty well. Speaking with Hrundi and asking for more orders, he mentioned that there's a contract to assist another Imperial researcher named Sundale of Shimmerine. Sundale is waiting for me out at Telisero, which is somewhere in between Saran and Molagmar. She'll need an escort through the dungeon, as she doesn't have the same combat skills like Lariana Macrina from prior. Getting straight to it, I teleported over to Balmora, and from there, took the Silt Strider to Saran. Peering at the map, Telisero was a short distance away from the town. Leaping my way there, I arrived at the Dunmer stronghold and began looking around. Sundale was nowhere to be found though, and I wasn't quite sure if I was supposed to head inside of the ruins or not. Wondering what to do, I spotted a note attached to the smaller structure present on the platform. Approaching it, it read, "Looks safe, went down to scout it out. Signed, Sundale." Already, I knew this was likely going to be a bad start for her. Venturing into the stronghold, I was attacked by 6th house servants and creatures of the like. It was interesting because I hadn't really faced the 6th house since the main questline. It was neat to see how far my character had come since then, and to relearn the intricacies of Dunmer strongholds. I fought against Dreamers, Ash Zombies, Ash Slaves, and Ash Ghouls. The only ones out of the bunch to really give me issues were the Ghouls, as they were good at letting off some pretty powerful spells. The first zone I was in was called the Upper Level, and there were quite a few hallways, passages, rooms, and even a cave system to explore. I actually really enjoyed this quest. I felt as though there was a lot of tension and build-up as to the whereabouts and well-being of Sundale. Part of me wondered if this was going to be a setup, and the other part of me wondered if she was already dead. There wasn't a whole lot to loot in the first area, but the second area was a little bit different. Making my way through several of the passages, I came across a door leading to the lower levels of Telisero. This zone consisted of one long room that connected to 5 other smaller rooms. In here present with me were more dreamers and ash ghouls. In the central area, there were 2 open containers, and one of them contained some decent loot, including the Telacero Propylon Index. Clearing out the enemies and checking room to room, through the first door on the left hand side, I spotted a scared high elf cowering on a table. Beneath her were a couple of rats, which were being a nuisance towards her. Clearing out the critters, I got in close and began speaking with Sundale. She asked if I was her guide from the Fighters Guild and apologized for going on ahead without me. She wondered if we could travel back outside together, and I agreed. Because all of the enemies from the previous areas were defeated, there were no problems leaving the stronghold. As soon as we made our escape, she thanked me for my efforts and made it seem like she was going to find her own way back to civilization. Recalling back to the Wolverine Hall, I spoke with Rundy and he asked for updates on the Altmer. I filled him in with the details and he rewarded me with 500 septums. Asking the Nord from my next contract, he told me that there's a 2,000 septum bounty out on the head of someone named Engare. Inquiring about it, he tells me that Engare is a wood elf mercenary in the employ of Master Naloth. Engare can be found somewhere in Telaga, the tower that's within Sadrith Mora. Rundy stresses though that I must be discreet in bringing the Bosmer to justice, as he doesn't want the guild's relationship with House Telvanni to suffer. He ends with saying that I'll receive half of the bounty if I'm able to take care of it. Leaving the Wolverine Hall, I levitated into town and entered inside of the tower. I tried to speak with a bunch of the NPCs in and around the area for information regarding Engare, but none of them had him as a dialogue option. So, scouting all around the tower and looking far and wide, I just couldn't seem to locate the wood elf. He wasn't in the lower tower, the upper tower, the general quarters, or in any of the outside areas. My next plan of action was to begin looking through the locked doors within the tower. Going through a few of them, most acted as shortcuts to the other areas I had already been through. There were, however, a few doors that served their own purposes. Unlocking several in the very upper part of Telaga, I came across rooms with trinkets, potions, enchanted weapons, gold, etc. Definitely a lot of useful items to loot, use, and consume. One of the rooms though contained a lone guard, and looking at his nameplate, it turned out to be Engare. Closing the door behind me, I tried to speak with him to get some sort of dialogue or reaction regarding this quest. Unfortunately, it didn't really lead anywhere or spark anything interesting. He told me that he was an assassin, so I pieced together that he probably made some enemies along the way with his kills, likely resulting in this bounty on his head. To get the job done, I cast a frenzy spell on him so as to not attract the attention of anyone else nearby, and then I struck him down with Hope's Fire. He fought with a bow and some enchanted arrows, but he was slow to the draw, and that resulted in him losing the battle. He had a couple of enchanted items on him, and leaving the space, I checked to make sure that nobody had any hard feelings about his death. All seemed well in Telaga, so I recalled back to the guild hall and turned in the quest to Rundy. He called it good work and paid me out my 1,000 septums. Getting right into the next one, I asked Rundy for more orders, and he certainly gave me quite the unique contract. He told me that the Fighters Guild had been hired to find a place called the Pai Egg Mines. Inquiring for further information, he says that no one really knows where these mines are located. Common rumors and thoughts are that it's somewhere in and around the Sheogorath region. According to legend, there are 7 eggs of gold located in the mines. Grundy wants me to find this mythical cave and bring back the 7 eggs. He tells me though that there isn't much stress in finding the Pai Egg Mines, as it likely isn't a real place, but it's the only contract he has left. Exiting the conversation, my next destination is that of Dagon Fell. Teleporting around and hopping on a couple of boats, I arrived at the fishing village and began asking around for any information. Speaking with some of the NPCs, they didn't really tell me anything that useful. There are lots of rumors surrounding the local area, and when asked about advice, they mentioned that even though Mazuleft is the big Dwemer ruin that everybody comes here for, there are more hidden and less obvious sites that have even more riches. I doubted this was meant to be a hint towards the egg mines, but I did take it as a general statement that grouped them in there with the other ruins, caves, and dungeons. Regardless, I continued onwards and began my search for the impossible. This quest is certainly interesting, and I don't think any of the others have been structured quite like this one. The player is told the general area of where to explore, the island of Sheogorath, which isn't that massive, but still decent in size to look around it. There are no further directions, instructions, advice, or anything of the sorts given to you. You're left to your own initiative, sense of wonder, and direction, and that's certainly something I can respect out of this quest. Well, as it turns out, the Pai Egg Mines is a real place, and isn't super tricky to get to or find either. In fact, they're pretty much off of the main pathway up in the Sheogorid region, heading west from Dagon Fell. Entering inside, there are mostly Quama workers, which are harmless, and Quama foragers, which are fairly easy opponents. Wandering around the mines, I found a door leading into the Queen's lair and entered on through. Shortly after, I located the Queen, and just behind her were the 7 golden eggs of legend. I did have some bloodlust in me, so I slew the Queen and her worker, which wasn't necessary as neither of them were hostile. The real issue though lies in bringing the eggs back to Hurundi. Each egg had a weight of 30. That means that just to have them in my inventory, I needed 210 pounds worth of freed up space. Even after popping some strength and feather potions, I was still over encumbered. But the nice part was that I was able to cast recall and land right in front of the Nord, saving me from abandoning half of my gear. Speaking with him, he asked if I had located the mines yet, still doubting their existence. I told him yes, and handed over the eggs of gold. Hurundi was surprised to say the least, and congratulated me on my achievements. He said that House Tilvani had put a lot of money into this contract, and he paid me out 10,000 gold. Asking for more work, Hurundi says that that's it for him, and that the only orders left are to speak with Perseus Mercius in Aldrune. It isn't stated by Hurundi, but Lorbummel Gro Aglak had also told me to speak with Seoring Hardheart, the guild master of the Fighters Guild. With almost all of the quest lines wrapped up, the only ones remaining are those given out by the old Noble Guild Master, and those belonging to the corrupt newer one. Something tells me that I'm in for a treat for the final act, and I'm really excited to see what's ahead.